Hi there and welcome to this episode of Piano TV. I'm Allysia and I'm going to be continuing along the train that we started with the last couple of videos on common problems that adult piano students tend to have when they're learning piano, problems with interpretation, problems on how they're approaching practice, and so on. And these lessons are gleaned from a few years in the trenches with adult students. I have a lot of students who I teach all at once, and I'm giving feedback to them on a weekly basis. So it's been a really good way to come across kind of these consistent issues that tend to come up again and again. So I wanted to share them with you. Before we get started, there's still time to join some of our theory webinars, which we're doing this month for free. Just take a look at the link below and you can sign up for those. They're webinar theories based on level. So we started with a preparatory level, grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3. You can do all of them. You can do just one of them. They're about an hour long. And I hope you'll join us for that. I'm also going to be opening classes for registration, so you can check the link below, www.pianotv.net/ptvschool for details on that. Registration is only going to open twice a year, and for some of these classes, it's only going to be once per year. Actually, I think for every single class that's opening in August, they're going to open this year, and then pretty much not again until next year. So if you are interested in taking piano lessons alongside others in a group setting, it's a lot of fun, and I hope you'll join us. So you can please feel free to check out that link and let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so problem number 3 that adult students face. This one's going to be pretty brief because it's very straightforward and specific. It's not really a cerebral issue so much as it just a kind of a practical practicing issue that comes up. And that has to do with the attention to detail with rhythm. Now, I think 99% of the students that I've taught are really good at attention to detail for notes. If someone hits a wrong note, they usually figure it out. If there's like one wrong note in an entire piece, that's really marginal. That's very, very easy to fix. Most people who practice piano are extremely good at self-correcting wrong notes, especially the further that they get along with their studies. Most people, even those who don't have maybe what they'd consider to be like a super good ear, have enough of an ear for those wrong notes that if you hit something wrong, it's something's off there. And then there's an ability to self-correct, to fix it so that the vast majority of your pieces are going to be totally error-free, note-wise. This is most people. The same cannot be said about rhythm. Now, some people are really diligent with rhythm, really accurate with it, and have a great ear for self-correcting rhythm. But I think for most people, it's a lot harder to catch rhythmic errors compared to note errors. So I have students who are excellent sight readers with notes, but who struggle with rhythmic detail. And this is something that comes up in almost, I would say, every single feedback session that I teach. And when I'm giving people feedback, it's not always the same people either. You can have person A who's perfect rhythm in one piece, and then the next piece there's a little bit of a sloppy rhythm interpretation and so on. I think most of my students, in fact, have been guilty of this, so there's no one being singled out here. And there's well over 100 people who I've been teaching, probably more in the realm of 200 people. So what happens, I think, is that we get this feeling with rhythm the way that we don't with notes, and that is, it's good enough. We get the sort of good enough effect, where it's a good enough half note, it's a good enough quarter note, might have slowed down or sped up a little bit, but it's like fine, it's fine. We don't take that lax approach with reading notes. If you're playing a passage that's supposed to be C, D, E, F, G, and instead you do C, D, F, G, A, you're not going to say, oh, that's good enough. That was close enough to the 5-finger scale I was trying to do. You're going to say, whoops, I made a mistake, and go back and correct it. We don't have that same attitude towards rhythm. So what I want to encourage you to do, even if it's kind of against your nature, is I want you to think about, okay, how can you be as diligent with rhythm as you are with reading notes? It's harder to self-correct. So there's a few challenges and a few solutions that I'll suggest here. The one suggestion that I give to all of my students, probably again on a weekly basis, play along with a recording. I like providing MuseScore files in all the classes that I teach so that you can have like a MIDI file playback of any piece that you're learning, and you can speed it up or slow it down. And that part's critical because, you know, not everyone's going to be able to play along with the recording of a like finished, final, up to speed thing. That's not helpful in the early stages of learning a piece. We need to be able to hear a piece at half tempo and sort of struggle along with it at that really slow speed to make sure that rhythm is crisp. This is a very good way to trigger your ear, because you're going to be getting instant feedback. If you're playing against a half speed recording of a piece you're learning, even if you're just doing, say, the right hand alone, if you're even just a fraction off, most people can tell that as accurately as you'd be able to tell if you're hitting a wrong note, because there's a delay or a discrepancy. You're pressing the note and then the note appears, and you're like, oh, that didn't quite match up. And then that gives you the opportunity to fix it. If this is a really, really big problem for you, Piano Marvel is a really good way to, this is a paid program, so I want to just be careful about recommending things that cost money. I know that for some people that's been a really excellent way to diagnose rhythmic issues, because Piano Marvel goes a step further. Not only do you have the ability to play along with the recording and adjust the tempo, but it actually gives you a visual, basically a drawing of where your notes were falling against the actual notes of the piece. So for those of you who really appreciate the visual reference, that can be useful, because you can see, okay, the note was supposed to be here and I was way over here. Or like I have a tendency to just, I'm falling behind the note, or you can kind of see it on a grid. So that's really useful for some people. But I think for the vast majority of people, being able to manipulate the tempo of a piece, play at the same time as a piece, and hear where the notes are matching and where they're not, is effective enough. Now, this is a far cry from the typical recommendation to just use a metronome. Metronome work is great. 10 out of 10 recommend metronome practice, but especially if you're someone who's sort of a good enough is good enough with rhythm, or you struggle to sort of feel rhythm in the intuitive way that you probably feel the notes and the accuracy of them. A metronome can just be a little bit too big of a leap. It's very easy to ignore metronomes. It's easy to let an extra beat go by and not even notice. Whereas if you're playing against an actual recording, if you get behind, everything's gonna sound wacky. Nothing's gonna match. You're gonna play notes. It's gonna clash with what you're hearing. But with a metronome, it's just a tick. So it's innocent. It's easy to put that tick to the background, totally forget it's there. For those of you who are very comfortable with rhythm and you want to make sure that you're playing things tightly, and that you're not accidentally holding that half note too long or cutting that dotted note off short or whatever, practicing with a metronome is great. Just working in small segments, 2 to 4 measures at a time with the metronome to make sure that it's tight. Again, not good enough. We don't want to treat rhythm with a laxness that would mean, playing a bunch of wrong notes in our piece. We want to make sure that it's tightly accurate in the same way that we try to keep our notes tightly accurate. So that's the message of the day, something to contemplate, something that most people struggle with from time to time. So I hope you'll consider how this could be a point of focus for you to improve in your own practice sessions, and I'll catch you in the next video.